This is what is referred to as the horn and bumper. It sits on the back axle of the wagons and helps steer and stop the wagon that's following. It's made out of 3/4 inch thick, 3.5 inch wide steel. These are forge welded together in the center, and on the lower portion this is what's called the bumper, and this is what we're going to show first of how we made this. The first part is to prepare the ends of the iron for forge welding. So we bring them up to not quite a welding heat. We want to scrape off all the excess oxidation. And here's where we'll actually use borax and use it as a flux. So we're putting on a generous amount of flux here, and this is what will prevent the oxidation when we put these pieces of iron back into the forge to actually bring them up to a welding heat. We're going to do these to both sides, scrape them off and coat them with borax to prevent the oxidation. Even though I'm wearing welding gloves here, this steel is up to a couple thousand degrees and it's awful hot on the hands. So I'm going to take a couple of clamps. We're going to position these so that they're parallel right on top of each other. We're going to clamp these in place so that they don't move, and then put them back into the forge, and we'll go ahead and bring them up to a welding heat. Now a welding heat is about 2350, 2400 degrees. So once these are up to a welding heat, the first weld is actually going to be kind of the tack weld. We're not going to get too aggressive. We're just going to kind of make sure that the two stick together initially. This is kind of a gentle weld, just to make sure the two are adhered together. I'm going to scrape off the edges where the joint is and add some more borax for a flux. Do this to both sides. And then we're going to go back into the forge and bring it back up again to a welding heat. And then the second time we'll become a little more aggressive and actually form the weld itself. I like to start on one end and move toward the other, so if there was any impurities in the center that it would get worked out. This weld we really don't want to be lengthened, but we would like the iron to be wider. So we're going to turn sideways here and actually draw this iron as it's being welded to a wider width. The steel is 3.5 inch wide. By the time we get done, it will be 3 3/4, almost 4 inches wide. So we're going to scrape the side one more time, add a little more flux to the joint, and go ahead and make the third final weld. Oftentimes forge welds are done in sets of 3. So we'll stick it back into the forge and bring it up one more time to a welding heat and go ahead and finish our weld. Again, we'll look for width more than we look for length on this lower bumper weld. So this third time through pretty much finishes the weld, but these two pieces of iron have to be separated. And so we're going to put them in the vise, and we're going to bend this 3/4 by 3.5 iron to a 90 degrees angle to the weld itself. Now, even though we have a good heat on the iron, it is 3/4 inch thick, and we'll actually have to add a little more heat to it in the process of the weld. But initially we want to separate them. It will bend just right at the weld, which is going to be about 1 inch above the jaws of the vise. Kind of get them started a little bit here. And I'm going to go ahead and use the rosebud torch so we can actually keep applying more heat right at the spot above the weld where it needs to bend. It's a pretty good piece of iron to bend at a 90 degrees. So it has to be pretty hot right at the spot where it bends. So we've got it kind of roughed in. It's a pretty wide bend, and we'll have to go through a couple steps to actually stop or start to tighten up that bend a little bit. And this is where it's a good test on whether you have a good weld or not. Now I changed the camera and the light so we can see a little better. It was kind of dark there, but you can see we're going to force this joint together. Now to get this a little tighter, we're going to stick this back into the forge again, and this time with the bumper sticking directly up so that the heat goes directly on the joint. Here you can see it sticking up out of the coal. We're putting the heat right on the bend. And we're going to take and upset this iron again right in the bend and kind of tighten up that bend. We're going to upset it 2 different directions. We'll do it once lengthwise, and then we'll bring it back on the anvil and do it right on the end of the bumper. And here again, we're just upsetting, bringing that joint together at that 90 degree bend. I'm going to change tongs so I have a little better grip, a little better control of this piece of iron. Now here's where we're going to drive this bumper down into the anvil and tighten up the bend. And in this, at the same time, we're going to try to make sure that it's straight at 90 degrees. Make sure we're flat. I'm going to bring the camera in here, focus in a little closer so you can see how we've tightened up the bend at the top of that bumper. And this is what the lower joint where the bumper is, what that forge weld looks like. The top piece of the bumper is a long piece, And the end of these pieces have a taper to them. So before we forge these together, we're going to take the top part of this horn and bring the end down to a taper. Put a taper onto it. And this tapered end is what actually will be forge welded together. We actually do it to the bottom part of the horn and bumper, the piece of iron that has the bumper to it. I don't show it on this video, but we do the same thing on the end. So both ends have a taper to them before they're welded together. This tapers from the 3.5 down to, I think it's under 3 inches, 2 3/4 if my memory is correct. Here we'll take the time to take some of the trip hammer marks off the edge, clean up the hammer marks, clean up the scaling. And then as the last step here, we'll put it back in the trip hammer. We'll take the flatter, and you see we use it there to take out the trip hammer marks and make sure we have a flat surface when we go back to forge weld these together. So we'll let this cool, kind of set it off to the side. And when it's cool, we're actually going to do some shaping to it before we forge weld it together also. Now we pattern out the shape that we want on a piece of plywood, how it wants to be finished. And we put these in the press and we bend them to make them fit the correct rise when they are attached to the reach. And this is the position they'll be in when they're actually forge welded together. So I made a little wood block that's going to be the same size as the reach that it is attached to, and we'll insert the block between the two. So right now we're going to prepare the horn weld just the same way we did the bumper weld. We're going to clean off the scaling. We're going to apply the borax for the flux. So when these two surfaces are put together, there won't be any oxidation that builds up. Use quite a liberal amount of borax on there. We want to make sure it's got a good coating on it. When you put the borax on, it just kind of melts right to the steel and makes sure it gets protected from the air. This is just one of the uses of the product borax that was hauled on these wagons, was for flux in forge welding. Now we're going to go ahead and we have our bolt holes drilled. We're going to put this block of wood in that's the same size as the reach, and go ahead and position both of these top and bottom pieces of iron that's going to forge together on the tips. This is what's going to form the horn with the bumper. Now, like we put clamps when we did the bumper, we're also going to clamp this together. We'll adjust the tips to make sure they're in the proper position, make sure they're lined up. Is when we want these just right when we actually do the forge weld. So we'll put good tension on these clamps and go ahead and stick this back into the forge and bring it up to a welding heat. Now this piece of iron, as it is here, adds up to about 80 pounds. So Calvin is being on the back end of this. He's actually the one that helps roll and control this as we put it in. And the hammer, and this is the initial tack weld. Kind of a gentle weld again. Because of the size and bulk of it. I just did it on one side. I'm going to go ahead and clean the edges, reflux the joint. We'll do this on both sides. Make sure this is a good sealed up joint. Stick it back in the forge, bring it back up to heat, and then we'll actually do the second weld of the pattern of 3 welds. So this will be the second time to the hammer, and we'll actually get into rotating this and this is the full strength weld. A little more aggressive blows with the hammer. This is what actually is bringing the 2 pieces into 1 piece. We just did a little bit of alignment before we go back into the forge. This time we'll actually do a little bit more. But this will be the final and the third weld on this horn. Now is when we'll pay a little more attention to our joints. We'll do a little bit more tapering to it. The 2 pieces are now one, and they can actually move together as one. This is more of a dressing up heat. I'm kind of pointing out some of the spots that we need to work on, to draw out. This is more shaping. You notice we didn't put any flux on this time. We just put it back, brought it back up into heat. We're doing our shaping, the final kind of touches, as much as can be done in the trip hammer. We'll bring it back up into heat, and not really quite as hot a heat, but again, we'll take it to the anvil and do a little more finish work with the hammer. Work out some of the trip hammer marks, kind of clean up our edges, but you can see the taper to the horn and how the 2 are now 1 piece. So this is kind of what it looks like when it's finished. We'll let this cool down a little bit, and then Calvin is going to take the grinder and we'll do a little touch up, a little finishing on the edges. Some of the edges have round corners to them. This is the second horn and bumper that's already been done. This is what they look like when they're finished, and this is where it goes on the back of the back axle. Thanks for watching.